research before really diving into it. So I think it's something he will pick up in the future, and the early ban kind of goes to show that they don't want to be playing that first pick game. And Kha'Zix gets banned as well, which maybe tells me they want to first pick Graves or something like that, because that's immediately a jungle pinch.
Interesting to see how they're going to end up going through with this. Of course, the bans on the other side, the big three, the unholy trinity, the champions of the red side is going to be forced into banning every single time. Varus picked up first for Immortals because he's so very powerful right now. Lethality changes came in and just took Varus and Jhin to the next level. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to track how these bans progress, especially when we get into patch 7.3, but even on patch 7.2 now, because with Lethality, Varus is arguably one of those you must pick every time he's available. Kha'Zix is also arguably one of those champions. So we got into this weird world where you're banning the normal three, but then you're also seeing a Kha'Zix banned by Immortals because they want to get Varus and not let Kha'Zix through. But that, in essence, is still giving a pretty good jungler in Graves and a pretty good pick in Jayce. So just a ton of power picks early is all we're seeing. A lot of damage on that Team Dignitas first rotation, the Graves and the Jayce together. Jungler and top lane, two roles that normally are tankier guys, CC laden historically. These two don't really bring that to the table, but man, do they pack a punch. Starting that draft off with a lot of offensive capability. But what is the counter to a good offense? A good defense. And as we saw in the first series today, a Maokai is a phenomenal defensive tool picked up by Immortals as well as the Malzahar grab. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see Flame's new take on the Maokai because quite honestly, when he played it earlier on in the season, he looked a little bit alone and the team wasn't very good at following up on him. Not to mention, it does put him in a difficult laning scenario if the Jayce stays top lane, as we are expecting from Ssumday. So a pretty interesting draft so far. Not really surprised to see the Jhin be locked in as pick number 3 for Dignitas. Right. Jhin, Varus, the two big ones. You don't want to be pinched away. You don't want to be forced down that tier list. Yep, those are the two. Unless we see them banned almost every game, at least in this patch. Now we're done with the first phase of picks, so we move into the second phase of bans, and they're mostly matching roles. Maybe we're going to see some more jungle bans from Team Dignitas because no jungler has been picked by Immortals. Right, it's jungler and support that have been picked on one side or the other, so it's going to be varying a little bit. Lee Sin taken off the table. They don't want Dardoch on that playmaking capability from the jungle. Going to go ahead and remove that from the available pool. Have to see how Immortals decides to respond with. They will take the support option off. Do not want to be dealing with that Zyra. Yep. Zyra is still yet to be nerfed because we're on patch 7.2. Malzahar and Zyra, the two strong supports. The next set of bans will be pretty interesting, with Misfortune still a potential support ban. And most likely another jungle ban coming out of Team Dignitas, unless they want to target... Yeah, there it is, the Olleh. Yep, Olleh going to be removed as well. Both teams just kind of feeling comfortable targeting those... What their opponents didn't pick, that's what they're going for. Obviously, just the normal cadence of the second round of banning ever since we implemented the 10-ban system. You got to make sure you're playing towards what you can best keep your opponent away from, and taking Dardoch off of those junglers that he can do Dardoch things on. That's part of the Dignitas game plan. Yeah, and I have talked with Hermes in the past about who you want to pick around, and generally he's okay leaving Dardoch to pick a later jungler, only because he feels like the second ban phase is where your weaker players get targeted, and he thinks Dardoch is one of the strongest players on his team, so he's open with that. There's some mixed philosophies on that for sure, because you want to put your best players in positions to succeed, but it is definitely something that Immortals is okay doing. He's going with the opposite philosophy of this guy is so good we can give him pretty much anything and he's going to be fantastic with it. Yep. Cody Sun hovering that Ryze pick for the rest of Immortals, potentially to give that to Pobelter, see if he's going to rock that one there in the mid lane. They will lock that in as Dignitas picked up that Misfortune support that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, expected to be played up against the support. Malzahar doesn't make that lane that crazy. You would expect direct side, but we got the warwick. Oh, the dog is out. This is going to be fun. It is. I mean, we got to see a little bit of warwick in the European LCS, but really not something I was expecting to see today out of Dardoch. We will be talking about that new kit. This is going to be a fun cast, Jatt. Like, this made my night right now. We're going to get to see warwick here in game number 1 between Immortals and Dignitas. The final pick on the side of Dignitas, responding to that dog, is going to be Cassiopeia in the mid lane. Yeah, and the Cassiopeia is actually a pretty good pick into the Ryze. That lane can go either way. Oftentimes when you see the Cassiopeia pick, you sometimes see it with a Ryze ban or vice versa, just because they're a pretty standard matchup against each other. But the warwick
will be the early focus. I am curious to see, A, what Dardoch's skill order is, because I know Azael, who's on the analyst desk tonight, is very passionate about the skill order on Warwick. Most people have been maxing Q into E, but I think, as well as Azael thinks, there is a lot of value in maxing the W early because of how much move speed and attack speed you can get early and how weak the scaling is per level up on Q. There's been a lot of discussion on this. Dardoch has obviously put some time into Warwick, and I'm excited to see if he can get any early game action going on that champ.
And for those of you who may not be as familiar with new Warwick, Q obviously the lifesteal, Ease the fear, W is that blood scent that allows you to have the extra attack speed, the extra movement speed, looking for those low health injured enemy players, or just activating it when you feel like.
Yep.
And this is the very first instance of a new Warwick being played in North America. So this game could very well define whether or not in the future, when we say NA Warwick, we follow it up with a lull or a PogChamp. One of those two is going to be posted after the Warwicks based on this performance. Yeah. It's up to Dardoch to decide how that's going to be.
We know how NA Erengar ended up, so you do not want that to be
we know how that happened.
The legacy of Warwick early on. But plenty of things to happen, and he's going with the recommended item start, which is expected, the Rejuve Bead with the Hunter's Machete, because he clears so healthily. And also, this, to me, hopes he's going with the early Tiamat, because that helps him clear a lot of the camps early.
Yeah, takes an extra 150 gold off the Tiamat you're looking to buy. The healthiness of this first clear cannot be understated, because you just end it full health pretty much no matter what, thanks to the lifesteal on your kit, especially in your Q. And we all know that Graves is a very healthy clear as well, as long as you know how to kite the camps around, not take damage from the monsters. So neither one of these two are going to have too much of a problem with that. Keystone Mastery's there on the bottom part of your screen. Everything pretty standard. Deathfire Touch on the Jhin, Malzahar with some Thunderlords. Everything's right around where it belongs. Courage of the Colossus on the Maokai, something worth pointing out. Ever since the nerfs to that, we are seeing some top laners drift away.
For Grasp.
But in this game, Flame is going to be going with it.
Yeah, Flame speaking to a more teamfight style, which is something that Immortals is definitely going to want to find. And to refocus in on some of the early storylines, Flame is going to look to kind of withstand Ssumday, as Ssumday has mainly been Team Dignitas' win condition, and the rest of Team Dignitas is in lanes where they're not necessarily advantaged, but they could be in positions to win. Those are somewhat skill matchup lanes.
And watching Ssumday play this kind of carry style, watching Dignitas invest so heavily into Ssumday, it's kind of into what's happening right now with this team. They know how good he is. They're always looking to play around him. And it's interesting because we were kind of talking, we got some information kind of about insight into what Dig is like right now. And Dignitas is really focusing heavily on fixing the communication, the mixed language situation, bringing in Ssumday, bringing in Chaser. They're like trying to build this ability for the team to communicate well and be able to become a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I found it funny, actually. Chaser going for a level 2 gank, so we'll get back to that in a second. Right in on a Pobelter.
Pobelter in some trouble, looking to make the plays. Chaser following up with the flash, but some damage is not going to tick away. The potion is there, keeping Pobelter alive.
Double summoner spells burned early for Pobelter already, and it has not been a good start to the LCS split for Pobelter. That early gank was looking to prey on some potential tilt that he could see from Pobelter there. Gets both summoners, sends him back early, and immediately puts Keane in an advantageous position.
All right, let's take a second and hear from Kobe, who's on a sideline report with Hermes, the coach of Immortals.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I asked Hermes about, obviously, the Warwick pick, and he said they were planning on picking it pretty much the whole time because they were expecting Dardoch to get targeted in the pick and ban phase, him being one of their strongest players. I also asked them what their favorite part about the rework to Warwick is, and it is the new blood scent, of course. The extra vision that it does provide is kind of on a Rek'Sai level almost. Plus, he talked about, yes, they are maxing, or at least putting 3 points early on into W, and it's situational, whether he levels up, in a team fight or something like that. Sometimes you need some spot healing and want to grab that Q, but they're super excited about that new pick, and they did expect Dardoch to get targeted. Back to you guys.
Thanks a lot, Kobe. Nice to hear some insight onto exactly why they're doing the Warwick and what they're planning on doing with it.
Yeah, and specifically getting all the bans out of Team Dignitas in the second phase and still getting the pick you want is pretty clever. It's one of the ways to maximize wanting to bring out one of the new picks since he's not necessarily meta yet. So Hermes, pretty criticized coach in the pick ban phase. That's something I'll give him props for as long as it works.
As long as it pays off. As long as it ends up being a net positive at the end of the day. Dignitas looking for some damage onto Immortals support. Not going to find a ton of it, and the piercing arrow coming back out along with those malefic visions.
Return gank onto Pobelter. Uh-oh.
Pobelter in a spot without summoner spells. There comes the flash into the miasma. He's grounded. He's in trouble, and Pobelter is going to be first blooded by Dignitas.
Not the start that Pobelter would have wanted, and you see Chaser being so sneaky with the way he was able to get behind there. Like, I see a ward in the river, but I'd love to go back and see how Chaser snuck around that spot to get the first blood on Pobelter. That lane just went from bad to worse.
And the Cassiopeia Ryze, 31 CS compared to 11.
Yeah, double CS burned early on. So watching Chaser here, there is a ward in the river, but Chaser, just at level 3, jukes around the side, heals up a little bit on the Scuttle Crab, all the while you're looking at Pobelter vision right now. He's feeling relatively safe in the river, but then he hugs the wall so much I don't think that ward saw him. So Pobelter really did not expect that wide of a route from Chaser, so pretty much outsmarted there when Chaser goes in. Keane runs out of mana, auto attack finishes, and they convert on the earlier kill. There goes Ssumday.
Ssumday looking to put some damage into Flame here in this top part of the map. Maokai into Jayce. Not gonna be too fun. There's your shot. Predicts the flash.
Why flash in a straight line from a shock blast right there? Big misplay by Flame, and we were talking about how with the Maokai, he needed to be able to withstand Ssumday's assault on Jayce, and that is not how you want to start out right there. Bad flash by Flame. Now he's more vulnerable into future ganks, and he doesn't even get out of the damage.
It's not that hard to predict when they're flashing in the same direction that they would have otherwise been walking.
Yeah, well, the nice thing that Ssumday did there is it was a very late acceleration gate on the shock blast because he shot out the Q, so Flame thought the flashback would clear it, but then he kind of placed acceleration gate right at the last second. So a little bit of mind game there, but even with that, just flash a little bit sideways so you don't get
just
killed
put
by
some
the
kind of an
acceleration
angle in there to get yourself 110% away from that thing so that you don't end up giving up the free kill. Now Ssumday with that 1 kill advantage, he's also got himself over a 10 CS advantage. Pobelter going to be soaking a lot of damage from these Twin Fangs. Keane is so comfortable in this lane right now.
Yeah, and when you get that much early gank pressure, it puts you up in a position to succeed. And speaking of the focus of this game that we're expecting with the Warwick, he is maxing W, so I believe the first competitive Warwick we've seen doing that. I'm always interested to seeing how much information these guys can take from Blood Scent and how intelligently they can use it, because it doesn't really have the most tells of who exactly you're going or how much danger you're flying into, but I'm looking forward to seeing Dardoch do it. With that, though, his mid lane's getting smashed, his top lane's getting smashed. Where do you really go, especially against the Graves? Because your Blood Scent could take you somewhere, and you're still not going to win that 1v1 against a Graves who's now level 6.
Absolutely not. The burst coming out from Chaser is going to be something frightening. Ssumday and Flame getting into it yet again in this 1v1 on the top lane. Flame's going to get the better of him that time around. Ssumday sitting on that phage, working towards Black Cleaver. So he'll have some extra damage and armor penetration here in a while, but not at the time being, as Chaser's going to be stealing away this red buff from Dardoch. He's the Graves, he's stronger, you just mentioned it, these two go head to head. Dardoch's not winning that, Chaser knows, and he invades.
And Dardoch just gets pushed around here. Like, what is happening? The Misfortune just meanders into the jungle and is able to take that. We're going to see the replay of the solo kill, though, from Ssumday earlier, and he pretty much just melee Qs, gets the 3 Ws in because he prepped it. And then right here, watch the shock blast into acceleration gate. Just
we've got the special,
Flame.
the over-the-shoulder shot. Kaboom! See ya.
Even more tragic.
Unfortunate, man. Never lucky. Flame, 0-1-0 on the Maokai. Keeping up in terms of farm compared to where he was, though. It's not bleeding out to a greater deficit. Still down 10, just like he was before. Dardoch sniffing around, seeing what he can find. New Warwick probably won't see competitive play, by the way.
Here it comes!
Dardoch now looking to make the gank. Lot in some trouble. Going to be shot down. Piercing arrows found him. Xpecial going to be flashing away from the chains. But the Malzahar ult comes out, and one last bit of damage is going to find Olleh another kill for his team.
There it is. You saw the move speed by Dardoch right there. Flash ulting in to close a massive gap. Perfect timing with the tweet from Dardoch on January 25th after he'd seen the Warwick kit. Not finalized, clearly, because he's thrown him in there. And the only place where he could really see that gank working out. Pobelter so far behind in the mid lane, already down in the top lane. Makes it work. Laud, level 6, Xpecial level 5. And here it comes. Let's watch this one more time. Super fast from the max W.
Misses,
Who cares?
but it doesn't matter.
Still gets the fear backwards. Then they miss the ultimate on the Varus, but Olleh is able to get the Nether Grasp. But as long as you have enough CC abilities, you'll land some.
Right.
Is what we're learning today.
Just used himself as a ballistic missile to put that fear down. The ultimate connecting was never necessary to begin with. It's actually deceptively hard to hit, too. It's so skinny. You've seen Warwicks just constantly fly past their targets. It's almost cartoonishly, because he also has the reversal animation. As soon as he lands, he turns around. It's like they designed him knowing that people were going to miss it like that. And now Dardoch going to be invaded. Chaser just going to head and throw that end of the line up against the wall, walk himself away. 40 to 34 CS in the jungle. Dardoch's going to be able to farm up a little bit better now with that Tiamat as Curtain Call opens bottom lane.
Oh,
3 shots.
good tank.
Third one
Olleh
is not going to be finding Cody Sun because Olleh blocks it up. Xpecial zoning them away. That final Curtain Call hit's just going to do a little bit to Olleh, but wanted to get Cody there, but Olleh had the timing, knew what he was doing.
Dardoch's got ult again, but he has no support from the mid lane, so Chaser's just bullying him out of here. I think Warwick ult's actually pretty easy to land, but we're going to see the combinations from Dardoch there. Oh, can he get one?
Oh, Pobelter in some trouble, looking to make the ult. Can't find it! Dardoch!
Oh no!
Twin Fangs burn him down. Keane's able to grab that kill. Doesn't quite get the one he's looking for onto Pobelter, but that's the problem, man. You go in, you don't hit it.
0 for 2. And see, this is a bad situation to be in because Keane is 2 levels up on Pobelter, and he's basically going in to save him right here. The miasma was really well placed by Keane, actually, right here, because that prevents Dardoch from being able to jump immediately. And then as Keane is kiting back, Dardoch is essentially spamming R to try and close that distance. Doesn't have enough move speed to get the long leap that would have connected him with Keane, and that is a big miss that puts Keane really far ahead now.
Keane 2-0-0 with a 33 CS lead at 11 minutes into this match is just absolutely huge. Morello Namicon completed. Tier is stacking. The man is ferocious as Cody Sun and Olleh are going to be pushing up here in the bottom part of the map. A slight CS lead for themselves. Both these AD carries obviously working towards that Yumu's Ghostblade, that lethality that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Lod probably going to get there a little bit sooner because his build does not include the tier. As I say that.
As we say that, Cody Sun's Ghostblade completes.
Yeah, Lod did go with the Bootsy Swiftness though.
Yeah.
So it's going to be its own delayer right there. But still, Team Dignitas in a very strong position with mid lane crushing, top lane winning because of the kill, and really just Immortals trying to send all their resources down bot right here. There's Bloodstain. Here comes the Realm Ward.
Dardoch's looking to make it happen.
Let's go.
Ryze ults in. Dardoch got it this time. You can't miss that one. Xpecial likely going to be burned away here, but he still gets himself out. Pobelter has to flash to make it happen. Immortals gets their kill, but it's a little bit messy. Ssumday now going to be bound up by that Olleh ultimate. He TPs himself down into this fight. Not going to be finding anything just yet. Chaser looking to make the moves onto Pobelter. Nice deadly flourish. Chaser just needs a little bit more damage to seal his fate as the curtain call opens up. They are not letting this one get away. 2 ult shots straight in the back. Double tapping.
Yeah, Flame didn't end up coming to that fight, but Ssumday did complete his teleport, so this is actually going to let Flame get ahead in CS. But that fight overall is just kind of speaking to what Immortals is trying to do to get back into this game, and it's go to the only place where they feel like they can get an advantage and forcing really hard. That time, Dardoch gets another successful gank off in the bottom lane, but it is ultimately traded as a 1-for-1, so really nothing much gained. Now Team Dignitas is just going to have more of a stronghold over that mid lane because Pobelter died again.
And I like seeing what Dig is able to do with this. Going back to what I was talking about earlier with focusing on the communication aspect for their players, really working on becoming a unit. That's the kind of team that when you hear that's what our objective is. We're not just trying to go with the old plan of hope that Keane can translate and maybe everything's going to work itself out. Dignitas has a long-term plan for this squad of players. And like we said, you see names like this, you expect them to be able to find those results, and maybe that's just what they're going to do, is take some time and get there eventually.
Yeah, it's interesting. Team Dignitas also has a bit of a YouTube series documentary, as a lot of teams have started doing. Funnily enough, it's called The Process. This team is owned by the 76ers, who have a Trust the Process meme for any of those NBA fans out there. Definitely look into that, but it is about trying to set a foundational long-term goal and not caring as much about recent success. I feel like recent success is really important in League of Legends, but they're going to teach Keane and Chaser English and get them going on the right track as their plan. If they can start stringing together wins, that'll be super important, but it has to start sometime.
They've got everybody down here in the bottom lane now. 5-man push potential, dive potential, kill potential. As Immortals also has their jungler and mid laner hanging around. Flame with no TP, can't join the fight too easily. Curtain call gonna be opened up. Olleh zoned away. Kills are not the goal here. The turret second blood, excuse me, is going to be though. Dignitas grabs that one and gets themselves out, but they will lose the top side.
Yeah, Flame slowly slapping away at that turret, and the second time Ssumday leaves the lane, he's able to take it down. We're gonna watch one more time this dive from a few minutes ago. Dardoch activates W, takes in the Realm Orb, gets the lead this time, but they don't quite get the kill, and this delays it so much. This means Pobelter has to chase through the turret as the teleport's coming in from Flame, so he can't go back out. Although I feel like he could have actually just hit the blast cone and been able to go in safely. Oof.
Not a fun place to be.
Also, important to note there that while the suppression was being hit, Pobelter used his Rune Prison. So if he would have chained this CC, then that would have been another way of securing that kill. So it could have definitely been executed more cleanly and probably saved Pobelter's life.
I think Pobelter was probably trying to Rune Prison to set up the ultimate for Dardoch, saying, hey, he's 0 for 2 on these, we should probably help him out a little bit. But it just ended up being a stack instead. Not ideal, as the Rift Herald actually gets taken by Immortals.
Yeah, that's not one you see often, and it goes to Dardoch, so that really felt like there's not much else to do on the map, as a lot of their turrets on the other side of the map have been lost. Just hoping for a little bit of extra golden experience. Not going to give him that much, in my opinion.
First Mountain Drake was claimed by Dignitas. Second Drake's going to be that Infernal that teams love to fight over so much. Still almost a 2,000 gold deficit. Immortals hanging behind a little bit, but we'll have to see if they can find the confidence to find some fights, find some of their own plays, or if they just kind of want to ride the storm out on this one and wait to catch up.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the control ward coverage by Immortals too, and it feels really strange that they have that much control ward coverage in that specific part of the river. Yes, it's going to convert you to a Rift Herald, but what is that going to give you unless you're turning Dardoch into a split push threat later in the game? Where I would like to see the control ward coverage is where Ssumday is right now, because you have Infernal Drake coming up in a few minutes, and you'd want to get vision control on that side of the map, since you would also like to be able to transition that into outer mid and bottom lane turrets. For now, though, maybe they're going to try and work something around Flame, since he does have that CS lead onto the Jayce, who is no longer in the lane, and maybe Dardoch is trying to pull something off with the game.
One thing I want to go ahead and point out right now that's an interesting tech choice, as Chaser dashes himself forward, realizes Dardoch's there, doesn't want anything to do with it. Jayce went Executioner's Calling second item right after his Black Cleaver because of how much healing is going to be on this Maokai and this Warwick together. He wants that mitigated right now.
True. It's not too uncommon against takes to see Black Cleaver followed by the last Whisper item, but I do like that they've gotten the Executioner's Calling this early, just because Sap Magic and the auto attack healing in team fights is ridiculous. So as soon as you can get healing reduction in your builds, it's worthwhile.
Ssumday very slightly behind in farm, like you mentioned earlier, but still sitting in a solid spot for himself on this Jayce, as Chaser and Keane moved themselves up to put some damage onto this top lane tier 1. The last tier 1 standing on the side of Immortals.
Oh, here we
Dig
go.
wants to remove that, but it's going to be Xpecial tied up. Ult into ult into ult into ult. See you later. Immortals shuts that one down, and with him off of the table, you don't have bullet time, you don't have the exhaust, you don't have his zone potential from Make It Rain, and Dig has to back away.
It's a lot of ults. That's a very dead Xpecial. Trying to get some forward vision control, but really not having the backup. Speaking of which, those 3 control wards have been cleared out, so they were able to get some of the control of that river back.
Oh, they're going for Pobelter, though.
buddy.
Curtain call opened up. They've interrupted his back. They're looking to gun him down. They won't find it, though. Cody doing a good job blocking those shots up, making sure they don't get the freebie. Pobelter has to pop the ghost to get himself away from that. Flame is top side, potentially setting himself up in a spot to maybe do something to Keane, but this is
sneaky.
This is pretty funny. They're going to end up backing right next to each other.
He's going to hope to catch him screen hopping, because Cassiopeia does a lot of damage. Please hit him.
Nope.
Did
All right.
either Flame didn't know he was in there, or he just didn't want to tango with Keane because he didn't think Olleh would be able to make it there in time. Now, keep in mind, that's a really fed Cassiopeia, and Flame doesn't have any magic resist, so he probably actually loses that 1v1, and maybe they don't even win the 1v2 because Olleh's ultimate wasn't up, but definitely a peculiar interaction. Thinking about it more, Flame shouldn't have taken that fight, and he didn't, but I was expecting it.
It was just funny to watch them both essentially think about backing 2 inches away from each other peacefully.
Yeah.
Counterintuitive to what you'd normally expect, as Chaser's going to be eating some damage from Pobelter. Gets himself away using the ultimate, but with Graves' ulti down and Infernal spawning here in about 10 seconds, Dignitas can't be too happy about how the way that played out.
Yeah, hugely beneficial play by Pobelter right there. Essentially face-checking into Graves, but having Chaser not wanting to return damage because they were outnumbered. This gives Immortals control over the pit, and if they can force a Maokai and a Jayce to TP in here, the Maokai is much more effective in this mid-game team fight, so looks like Team Dignitas is just going to have to concede.
Dignitas going to go no contest on that objective, not worry about it. It's one Infernal. They'll take care of the next Drake. That'll be their problem. But right now, they are not in any sort of a spot to be fighting a fight like that against Immortals that have closed this gold lead down to about 1,000. Kills tied up at 4-4. They're down a turret, and that's pretty much the difference.
Yeah, and so much of the struggles from Team Dignitas this year have been about someone not named Ssumday being able to carry or not. Because we've seen games from Keane where he gets incredibly far ahead. He had a 9-kill Azir game fairly early on, which they were not able to convert into a victory. And here, with the level 2 gank from Chaser, followed by a return gank to get another kill, and really putting Keane in a spectacular position to carry, Immortals just kind of sneaking back into the game speaks to the other positions not being able to convert advantages, and it's something that Team Dignitas is going to have to do if they ultimately want to find success.
And what you talked about, the opening line of this broadcast, you mentioned the inconsistency of these teams. And consistency is something that seriously separates top contenders from middle of the pack and bottom of the pack teams. And both of these squads really need to find a way to figure that out.
Yeah, you look at the game we just saw, and Ryze started for Cloud9 today, had some inconsistent performances, but then C9 put Impact back in, and that guy is a rock. He's actually the highest winning percentage of NALCS players. He's only lost 1 game. Able to come in and really just close out that series for C9. Obviously, we'd like every player to be that's consistent, but it's just an example of what a veteran quality player like Impact can do.
His Maokai's tankiness was honestly disgusting. Just walking into the middle 1 versus 5, you guys can't kill me, I'm just gonna waste your time for 15 seconds. That was exactly what Maokai is intended to do if he is ahead. We'll have to see if Flame can do that this game. He's got the Sunfire Cape up and running, working on that Spirit Visage for item number 2, going to give him some protection against that Cassiopeia. And then likely more armor going to be coming after that. Dardoch in some trouble. Graves going to be using some burst. Curtain Call connecting one after the other. Keane's not able to lock down Dardoch any further as he gets himself away with the ulti to escape.
Yep, that's another use of the new Warwick Ultimate. Update, by the way, we've kind of gone away from Dardoch's Warwick. He's gone 3 points W, 2 points Q, and maxed his E. So he's as tanky from a skill perspective there as he can get with his E. 55% damage reduction while that thing is active. Aside from Alistar Ultimate, I was kind of going through it. That's the tankiest self-made ability in the game, obviously on a much lower cooldown and more scalable. So I actually kind of like that skill order, getting a lot of move speed from the W. You're immediately going into the thing you want in the mid-game team fights. And with that max E Warwick tank, as well as the Maokai, who's going to stack his damage reduction from his ultimate on top of Warwick, that is a really hard-to-kill front line if Pobelter and Cody Sun can get the damage through to assist the team.
For those of you wondering, putting the points into Warwick's E reduces the cooldown, it gives you more damage reduction, it does not extend the duration of the fear. No matter what level that ability is at, you're only going to be getting the 1 second fear, the 2.5 second maximum duration from it. Ssumday hanging around this bottom part of the map. He and Flame have sort of switched to the other end, going to be posting up down there for a good while now. Teleports up on both of these two, so should a team fight break out anywhere else, they're going to be able to get there. But like you already mentioned, at the prospect of the Dragon fight, that's Flame's natural territory. That's where he feels good in those 5v5 team fights. Ssumday wants to keep this split push game going.
Yeah, and currently the Waves are not in position to do that, so Team Dignitas is trying to set up some type of macro play, although they're really just a poke composition. You look, all the marksmen that are there, like where is the hard initiation or the engage? It's pretty much a Jhin ultimate, and maybe you have a Cassiopeia Miasma. That's their way of forcing, which is pretty difficult unless they're snowballing their lanes completely, whereas Immortals have the Warwick and Maokai who can get realm warped into the backline, and the Malzahar Varus. Like, they're the team that has the ability to choose their initiations, and it's all about for them now that they've kind of equalized this game to not be as impatient as they have been in the past, making these plays work.
Ssumday going to finally take down that remaining tier 1 turret on the side of Immortals. That's going to put Dig up to a 3-1 advantage in that department. Bring them back up to a 2K gold lead. Olleh barely getting himself out of that miasma. Would have been in some serious trouble if he was locked down and repeatedly exposed to Twin Fangs. Bottom side, Flame's going to go ahead and answer the turret that Ssumday grabbed with one of his own and bring the game once again back to closer.
Yeah, just at 1,000 gold. And you and I were talking before this series, like, what are we expecting? We had no idea what to expect.
So hard to predict this.
Both of these teams have been struggling with a 2-4 Immortals and a 1-5 Team Dignitas. They've had good games. Team Dignitas looked great early on, and Immortals have shown very small flashes of good play, but ultimately we're the team with the better record coming into this one. So this is actually pretty close to what we expected, even though we didn't know what to expect.
It's totally just out there.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where you never know what's really going to be happening. And I guess that's the only prediction you can make. I predict that this game is going to be completely unpredictable.
A little bit weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange. As soon as the Warwick was locked in, I knew we were going to be having a little bit of a weird one anyway.
Probably lower kill than we were expecting because Immortals have been so forceful in a lot of their engages early on in the year, but we're reaching that point in the game now that Immortals had that early deficit and they're the team with most of the engage tools, that it might get a little more bloody. Infernal Drake in 10 seconds, Dardoch with the maxed damage reduction, 2 big items onto Flame. I want to see Immortals try and dive in, but they got to be careful against Misfortune ult and a Cassiopeia.
You gotta watch out for those zone control tools. But Chaser is full HP this time. He's got his ult this time. Dignitas is not looking to be in the business of giving away 2 Infernals.
Let's go, Immortals. Jump in there.
Something happened. Dardoch's gonna go ahead, pop that E, but it's Dragon secured by the side of Dignitas. Flame's gonna be bound up, locked down. Chaser is donezo. Pobelter grabbing the kill as Dignitas retreats. They got their Drake. They lose their jungler. And can Immortals make anything else happen off of the back of this? Edge of Night going to be keeping Lod safe from Dardoch doing anything to him. And Immortals are going to have to settle for that kill for Drake trade.
Yeah, Chaser did get the smite there, so it is decent for Team Dignitas, and Immortals couldn't quite get in as much as they wanted. They used both suppression abilities right on top of each other to lock down Chaser, and really the rest of Team Dignitas gets away. But they had minion waves pushing in both the top lane and the mid lane, and they're actually up in gold, despite giving away the Infernal Drake, which gives gold back to stats.
A little bit of a replay of how the fight went down. You'll see Dardoch really try to steal this.
Yeah, well, they were really going in for the Realm Warp. 165 is the health there. Dardoch actually smites. Chaser doesn't, but it's the Chaser auto, I believe, that was able to finish it off. He still managed to lock down Chaser and not quite able to go in. If Immortals would have gone in with the Realm Warp earlier, so it wasn't so much a smite steal, since really Immortals with those team fighting tools with Maokai and the Warwick at this point in the game were huge. Should have been a little more confident going in there, but unable to quite pull the trigger in time.
Dig feeling okay right now, but as they go on further and further into this game, positioning is going to be huge. When you have no tank on the team, that means every single person is vulnerable if they find themselves in a spot where they're not quite supposed to be at that time. And you can best believe that Immortals is always going to be on the lookout for that with the Realm Warps and the Warwick power with the W to track those isolated targets down and punish those mistakes.
Yeah, and I want to see Immortals be able to convert on these initiation tools, because even thinking back to their series against FlyQuest, where they did kind of get run over by FlyQuest aggression and random Evelyn ganks and a super fed Zed from high, I like their team fighting compositionally in those games, and I feel like that is what set them up, but they could never get to that phase of the game with a reasonable gold amount. So they have now. They have made it to 27 minutes with even gold, and I think they have the superior team fighting composition, so they need to be able to execute and pull out this game.
This is a game that can answer one of those questions. Instead of having to wonder, you know, could they win the game if the early didn't go so bad? This is a game where we can actually get some evidence based on that and see whether or not it's just their early game or whether the team as a whole has more things to work on. And that's kind of something that we learned from talking to Immortals as well. They know that their performance is a struggle right now. Yep. They're experimenting with a lot of different styles. They're trying to find exactly how they want to keep playing. They're constantly changing and adapting based on what happens in scrims and what they think is going to be the next big thing to do. Kind of explains what we're seeing with the Warwick right now. They're just trying to find their niche and their flow. Maybe they're getting into it.
Yeah, and at this point in the game, with Drake being down, 28 minutes in, they're wanting to hopefully get some wards set up so they can get a teleport flank in at some point in the game. And looking at Team Dignitas, and like, what are they going to have to do? they have to set something up around the map. They're building these QSSs to deal with the double suppression from the Warwick and the Malzahar, but ultimately, they are a poke comp that has a Jayce in a side lane who's supposed to become advantaged on the Maokai, but they're not able to execute right now on any of those things. They're never setting up for poke. They're really just kind of waiting for Immortals to engage on them and hope they mess it up. So it's a really difficult game actually for Team Dignitas to pull out.
Just hope Pobelter does one of those classic realm warps where he throws himself and or somebody else just straight into the middle of people and gets himself killed. But so far, that is not the story being told. 29 minutes in, only 9 kills to speak of. Gold could not be closer, as it appears to literally be the exact same.
Yeah, we're only seeing the outer turrets being down on both sides. It's actually quite rare that you have this little of the buildings destroyed in the game this late in the match, and it's partially because these teams are struggling. Team Dignitas has been unable to get the waves pushing in what should be a turret destruction-based team with the Jayce and the Graves, who really should just be pushing in lanes, getting a gank off, trying to get kills, if that is to be working. And then Immortals, for theirs to be working, isn't so much about turret destruction, but forcing team fights and then turning that into powerful pushes. And because these teams have been so even or unable to set up the right plays, we're in this point of a very close game.
Dardoch in a spot where he's got to use the ultimate to escape yet again. It was funny, when Warwick originally got reworked, there was a guy on Reddit who was some sort of like Warwick one-trick master tier guy, and he said his biggest complaint about the Warwick rework is the fact that his ultimate is this fearsome predator that prowls around Summoner's Rift and hunts people down and rips them to shreds, unless he's low health, and then it makes him run away.
Yeah, love it. It's like, we have a few abilities in the game that are like this, like Scion ultimate used to run away is strangely satisfying.
You scream cowards and then run
cowards
exactly in the opposite direction.
Malphite ultimate, because you don't get the sound from Unstoppable Force, and it's just like this whiff of air as you're flying away. So, yeah, it definitely kind of feels weird.
It seems strange. It seems like you should only be using this to go into people, but sometimes the opposite is true. Flame on the flank here. The rest of the team's not exactly in a spot where he could do anything, so he's got to make sure he's being at least a little bit careful of where he is. Pobelter in mid lane, Drake 25 seconds away as Dignitas have priority over the area to clear away some of those wards and maintain control.
Exactly. It's been roughly 6 minutes since the last death, and that was the last time these teams converged around the Drake. Now though that we're 30 minutes in, and we got a Malzahar plus a Warwick on Immortals side, if Team Dignitas put too much towards the Mountain Drake, Immortals is just going to kill Baron. So they're trying to do this push and pull between the Drake, but Immortals is not the team with Mountain Drake, so they might not be able to rush it down as quickly. Dardoch wants to set it up. There's a ward right in the pit.
They're looking to go for it. They don't even care because the ward is disabled by the control ward from Immortals. Another blue trinket ward is placed in the Baron pit, which gives vision for a split second as it's placed. And that is how Dignitas find out what's going on. That scares Immortals away, and Keane's able to pick up the Drake.
Yeah, second Mountain Drake for Team Dignitas now. Which will make Baron very rushable for them with Cassiopeia. And I should point out that mechanic with the control wards. Oftentimes, I'll see a control ward in a pit, and the enemy team will have a ward in it. If you're trying to sneak the objective, don't hit that ward, because the control ward has completely disabled it. But as soon as you attack the ward, you reveal yourself, and essentially eliminate the effectiveness of the control ward in that moment. So, Immortals are trying to be cute right there. Team Dignitas saw through the illusion, placed another trinket inside, and then ended up getting the Mountain Drake for free.
Dignitas doing a good job of avoiding what would otherwise be a tragic situation if they were to trade away a lone Mountain Drake for a big old Baron Nashor. The little Drakes are done though. 2 Mountains, 2 Infernals is going to be all we see this game. From here on out, it's going to be nothing but Elders. And with one more large objective on the map, it'll be interesting to see how these two teams go about playing for and around that. Because right now, they're not wanting to fight for anything less than something amazing.
Yeah, pretty much just Drakes. And sometimes not even that.
Right.
So
sometimes they're saying, we don't want this fight at all. We're going to go to the other end of the map and look for something else. Even if it's risky, we just don't want to fight you.
Yeah, this is potentially turning into a long one, but it's very important for both these teams that they're able to pull out the victory, and we're gonna keep hammering on this story. Immortals needs to find ways to get initiations, but it's tricky against Team Dignitas, who are basically trying to set up a full poke composition. And one danger against poke compositions, if you're Immortals, is when they are forcing the objectives, they don't want to put themselves against a backboard that just lets them get slammed by poke over and over again. And likewise for Team Dignitas, they don't want to do the same thing because they'll have nowhere to retreat if they force an objective. So we're in that strange stalemate for both of these teams. Immortals are going to go, though, take the risk.
Ssumday's in the bottom lane. He's got the TP available, but Baron's going to be burned down very rapidly. Attack of the Crabs, whittling their health bar away. It is secured by Cody Sun, of all people, and Immortals have found their objective.
Whew, that looked to me like an Immortals damage spike. More so than trying to get a smite secure. They picked a health and they all just bursted it when they thought it was going to get low. Dardoch doesn't quite get the smite, but Chaser wasn't even there. So it was a little bit less risky than you would have thought, and good decisiveness by Immortals. Now they have Baron, they have to make use of it.
Now we see what it turns into. Is this going to be a big Baron power play, or are they just going to use it to stall for 4 more minutes? We'll have to see exactly what they decide to go for. This game needs to get a little bit bloodier. Hasn't seen any change towards that scoreline in a hot minute now, but Immortals are at least looking to pack some turrets under their belts. 3-3, all tied up in that count so far. The tier 2s are the name of the game.
Yeah, Baron empowered waves. They may try and set up a bit of a 1-3-1 since this lockdown from Team Dignitas isn't that great. Pobelter's got to be a little careful. But Team Dignitas looking like they're safely recalling out of there.
Chaser still hanging around down here. He has Hex Drinker, QSS, and Edge of Night, so actually plenty of magic resistance on this guy.
Yeah, almost more than you would expect on Graves, but all of those can still build into 80 items. Not the full lethality build that we have come to see. No Ghost Blade, but here we go. They're faking a 1-3-1 with Ryze and now moving towards the mid lane.
Immortals making it happen. Dardoch gonna go ahead, pop that E, just scare these guys away at the thought of him jumping into the fight, and they grab the tier 2.
Yeah, and this might just be what Immortals try and do with this Baron is be a little bit slow and steady, go around the outside, take down turrets 4, 5, and 6, and then maybe wait on the next Baron and the Elder Drake to pull off kind of the final stage of their plan, because one of their flaws have been they're trying to make so many plays that they get over-aggressive and dig themselves holes. This game, they were kind of forced into a position where they had to pull from behind and have been very measured in the risks that they're actually taking.
One interesting thing to comment on what we were talking about earlier with all the magic resistance on that Graves. When you look at the team he's up against, you've got a Ryze, you've got a Malzahar, you've got a Maokai, and new Warwick, since it's the first game we're seeing him in A, he's got like a 60-40 or 70-30 damage split in the favor of magic damage. So it's going to be helping a lot against him as well if Chaser finds himself stuck fighting away this rabid dog.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, magic resist will help him against a lot of the characters, but against a full lethality Varus, if he gets hit by a Q, he's still going to lose about 2/3 of his health. So he's gone tanky. Not sure if he's getting the full benefits out of it. Even so, Immortals with the Baron buff still going. He's going for that third outer turret.
Dardoch looking around for anybody he might be able to hunt down with Dead Man's Plate as well as his W. He is a very, very fast person on this map. It's going to be very frightening if anybody from Dig finds himself in a spot where he can punish that. As the tier 2 in the top lane, the last remaining tier 2 for Dignitas looks to be falling down here in just a moment. Dig's not going to make any kind of a play for it, and that Baron buff ends up doubling Immortals' turret count.
Yeah, so that's the best safe way to use the Baron buff. They never had to dive. They didn't have to deal with the small choke points when entering the base. And they still technically have about the end of this wave if they want to go a little bit further. Team Dignitas hasn't shown a propensity to be able to clear these mini waves that well, and they could go for the risk, or they can wait for 30 seconds and then try and set up a fight around the Elder Drake, which I think is much more likely.
Dignitas just feels like they're being choked out of everything right now. They're so afraid and so cautious to move forward at all. Immortals is just taking over the rest of the map. They're setting down wards. They're controlling the area. And Dig is just slipping down this slope.
Yeah, and this has been pretty common for Team Dignitas, actually, as they're trying to strive towards speaking entirely in English. It just doesn't seem like they have much complexity to their gameplay. They're just kind of meandering around and hoping that they can get the right poke down, but even so, like, their team composition doesn't necessarily have the tools. Here we go, though. Elder Drake, this is the time, even though it's just the one Infernal, that you want Team Dignitas to go for something. And you know what? He's just going to give it up.
Dig's not doing it. Granted, like you said, small true damage burn compared to what they could have. It's only going to be that 90 damage burn instead of something more frightening like the 180 that Dig would have. But it's still an extra burn. It's still going to increase the bonus offensive capabilities they get from their current Infernal Drake. And Immortals are just getting everything for free. Dignitas is letting them walk away with it.
Yeah, the last kill in this game was 13 minutes ago. So it is definitely slowed down from what was already a slow pace. And what's happening, though, is the goal lead, despite getting no kills for Immortals, has increased by 7,000 because Team Dignitas is getting completely outplayed on the map, which is not the way you would have expected the Dardoch team to gain edges, since he is all about being aggressive and fighting people. So a much different look, and a lot of it is just because Team Dignitas is conceding all of this ground instead of fighting for it.
And now Ssumday, this guy who wanted to be the split pusher, this guy who was supposed to create this pressure at different points in the map, he's constantly with the rest of the team just sort of hanging out. Like, what are you supposed to do with this Jayce when everybody in the team doesn't leave the base?
Yeah, he got the one solo kill early, but was unable to pull advantages off that. Keane got a ton of help from Chaser. Now, because of all the back and forth and grouping that Dignitas has done, Pobelter is ahead of him in CS. So I do credit Immortals for bouncing back from what was a rough start. And now, you have a little bit of time left on this relatively weak Elder Drake buff and no Baron buff, but they're just going to keep Team Dignitas corralled up in their base. Maybe they dive because they're insanely tanky right now.
Very, very tanky with Dardoch and Flame. These two are going to take a lot to kill, despite the fact that there's Void Stabs and Mortal Reminders and various tools on Dig, but Keane is out of there, which means Pobelter is able to find a little bit of damage onto the tier 3. Immortals, feeling pretty good about that one. The next Baron going to be spawning here in slightly under 1 minute, and you know Immortals is going to be looking for that one too. They've got the tools to take it. They've had awesome control over this game so far. 40 minutes in, they're again looking for the tier 3. Likely not going to be finding anything here, just keeping Dig pinned up as they wait for Baron number 2.
Pretty much. They have the freedom to just go and make sure all of their minion waves are pushing at the same time. And you're wondering what the plan is going to be for Team Dignitas. I don't think it's very complex. They're going to hope to steal Baron. And if they don't, they might get steamrolled by Immortals.
If they don't steal it, the game pretty much ends because it's going to be more of what it has been for the last 13 minutes, which is Immortals quickly and quietly just taking everything. Keane, that damage, man.
So 60% of Keane's health with that lethality Varus Q from Cody Sun. Plus, I believe he still had the Elder Drake burn for the last bit of that. Or either way, it's just a bunch of damage. 415 AD.
Way too much damage, as now Immortals going to be looking for Baron Nashor. Dardoch and Pobelter, they can easily two-man this, but they've got the rest of the squad heading over right now. Flame's going to be on zone control, keeping Dignitas away from this one. Ssumday's showing up, looking to grab a couple of shots here. Shock blast into the pit, might be looking to do it. Flame's going to be trying to stop the shots if he can. Baron is secured by Immortals. Dignitas has no way in. Look at the health bars, thanks to those piercing arrows.
Yeah, they just can't even get close right now, and you're really seeing a dismantling of this Team Dignitas team, although very slowly disassembling their team composition. This was just solid play by Immortals here. 60% of
Jayce
he's done nothing but stack magic resist items, has no health items.
Then he hits another one on lock.
Q's gonna hit, then he gets law, and then watch this. Flame does his best to try and tank, although he was unable to stop anything. But then Keane has to go back as well as they get the Baron. So now, look for Immortals to set up the inhibitor turrets. You see the pings go down in the bottom lane and in the mid lane. Maybe a bit of a 1-3-1 from what is now a 6-item Ryze. And Immortals is incredibly strong.
6-item Varus as well. Death's Dance, the final pick for Cody Sun.
Yeah, that's it. That's the build for maximum poke right here against a team that can't atomize armor. He's able to skip the last Whisper item and just go full lethality because no one has built armor because they saw a bunch of magic damage to us. But Cody Sun's damage is actually going to be some of the highest we've seen for a 5-kill game. They're going for it.
And even if you were building armor, who's actually going to build defensive stats on Dig? They don't have a tank. They got a Jayce and a Graves and a Misfortune. There's nobody there that can soak that damage, as Immortals are going to break the base. Again, no contest. Dardoch on the front line, Flame on the front line. Cody Sun's going to be soaking some damage from one of those shock blasts, but it doesn't really even matter. Immortals found inhibitor number 1. Now it's time to go bottom and find number 2.
Yeah, the shock blast barely touching the front line of Immortals. And this is not the team you would have expected to go, what now is 18 minutes without a kill, while extending their lead by 10,000 gold and stomping on the opponent. But that's what Immortals is doing right now.
Flame hanging out in mid lane, continuing to enchant those minions, make them hard to kill, provide a split threat, as now he regroups with the rest of Immortals, who are having no trouble whatsoever taking down this second tier 3. Deadly Flourish is coming out trying to hold the line, but Dignitas is playing the same game they've played for the past 20 minutes, and they're just not putting up enough of a fight for it. Dardoch Flame, Pobelter soaking too much. Doesn't want to be eating that much.
Yeah. And you would really love Team Dignitas to try and fight, but they're so poked out that they don't want to go suicide because they can't kill the tanks in the time they're getting poked out. But this could actually end 5 kills to 4 at the current
Totally
pace,
could.
because Team Dignitas is not going in, and they're just losing all of their...
I'm half expecting once Immortals is just going to get to the Nexus turrets and Dig walks back into their fountain. That's what they've done this entire game. They're watching Immortals walk up and take everything. They're like, this fight isn't a good fight. We'll take the next fight. We'll take the next fight. We'll take the next fight. Problem is, now your base has half of it left. When is the next fight?
Next game?
I guess we'll take the next game. All right, we'll just...
Yeah.
We'll get them at level 1 in the next game.
And this,
Forget our next.
This is what happens when you don't team fight and you have one champion with poke. You get 27,000 damage to champions with no one on your team else being above 4,200. As far as damage share, that's going to be some kind of record.
This
by Cody Sun.
That's
what
wait,
happens.
hold on. 4, 4, 4, 12, so 14. He's almost 66%
Yep.
of the team's damage
That's what
share.
we're watching.
What kind of a game is this, Jatt? I do not even know, but Immortals are looking to make it an Immortals win kind of game. Pushing up in the top lane, everybody's here. It's going to be a party. The super minions have already put themselves in a spot where they are going to be pressuring the other 2 lanes as well. This should be it.
And it can be slow and steady. They do not have the Baron buff, but they don't need it because Team Dignitas is going to have to send defenders to those lanes, and if they get hit by any of the Varus Qs, they get pushed back. Lod should... There we go. There's 60% of your health again.
1 Q. Back to the fountain you go.
Yep, Jayce is already defending, so now they can take the 3rd one.
Hey, there's the Dignitas defense. Throw out the miasma and everybody walks away. That's what is happening this entire game, and it's failed time and time and time again. They gotta fight eventually. Curtain call opens up. Playing with Dardoch eating him. It's not doing any damage at all. Dardoch takes a big old munch out of one of those critters, gets himself some health back. Speaking of health, Chasers isn't looking so hot now.
I mean, that's also what this Varus can do, and they target banned a little bit so that they could get Varus without having something like Kha'Zix who can jump on top of him. So a lot of this was orchestrated in the pick and ban phase, but boy, I did not expect it to play out this way.
And now that Cody Sun has that Death's Dance we talked about earlier, every single one of these arrows is healing him up for a couple hundred HP as well. So the return poke from Ssumday doesn't do anything. It can't stick.
I'm actually hoping this game ends 5 kills to 4.
It's going to.
21 minutes without a kill. And they could end the game if they keep this up.
Dig won't fight him.
No, they refuse to fight because they would lose the fight is what's happening. And every time they've had an opportunity to fight, they would lose that fight. So Immortals just slowly walking it in.
Pacifism.
This is wild.
The name of the game in League of Legends 2017, apparently. Dignitas just trying to find alternate ways to win without having to fight their opponents, and it's not working out too hot so far. Lod putting some decent damage down into Olleh. Deadly Flourish not going to be finding its mark. Dignitas looking to chase these guys out. Shock Blast coming in, collateral damage coming in, but the Locket Shield absorbs almost all of it.
Yep.
And Dignitas at least somehow manages to hold the line.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they were able to hold off. They still have both their next turrets, but we got the Elder Drake up in a minute. We have the Baron up in a minute. And I am wanting a stat of what is the longest mid-game lull in kills. Because I've seen the latest First Blood we've had was 26.5 minutes or something. It happened in Season 3. I've seen very low kill games, but the fact that this was 5 kills to 4 at, I believe, 24 minutes, and we've now gone essentially a whole nother game since that point without kills is ludicrous to me. Yeah, but it is what Team Dignitas has in this game, and it's how both teams are kind of playing the game. Team Dignitas, you saw they tried to throw the Graves ult and the Jhin ult and the Jhin gate, but they just don't have the tools to fight Immortals with that massive front line.
And you can hear the crowd. The thunder sticks are booming and clanging at the ward depths because those are the only things dying on this map other than minions right now. We got to get something to get excited about.
Oh, they might be able to steal, to rush Baron if they were to go right now, but they don't have any vision inside the pit. So they're not going to do that.
Immortals gonna put the kill onto the Elder Drake again. They've got themselves that objective, and Dignitas decides to go back to the tried and true plan of go home.
CS, more CS, get the CS. They're not
Don't forget
max
the
items
CS.
yet.
Don't you forget the CS.
Yeah, they were max items on Immortals. Need a Titanic Hydra for Dardoch, but they're not yet max items on Team Dignitas. Here, they got Elder Drake, they got Baron. They're going to walk in and get 3 inhibitors down. They're going for it. I want the 5 kill victory. 5
kills to 4 kills. The story of the game for so long now. Curtain call opens up. Baron is secured. Lod deciding to get the hell out of dodge before he gets caught out. Olleh coming around, looking to make some kind of a play if he can. Flash ulti is available. Olleh not going to go in for that. Instead, all of Immortals turning towards mid lane. They've got the big double buffs. They're marching down with a huge minion wave. This should be them just completely running over this base.
I want Flame or Dardoch to like flash ult someone, but I guess they don't have to. Maybe it's this inside game that they're challenging themselves.
In the game with no kills.
To win without killing another person, but they had the opportunity there with Baron and Elder Drake to be in flash, push to advance range, and lock up a kill. 3 inhibitors down once again. Baron, minions, soon to be in all 3 lanes. Let's go.
3 inhibitors down, 1 Nexus turret down. No kills in 25 minutes, but Immortals only care about killing that Nexus. Dignitas not going in just yet. Chain of Corruption onto Keane. QSS gonna be used. Ssumday and Xpecial off in the flank, and Dig will not pull the trigger. They're not gonna do it, bullet time, there we go!
Just fight him.
Ssumday.
It's not gonna happen.
Jumping around to the skies on a minion. Chaser trying to find some damage onto these guys. Dardoch's finally going in. Here we go. Kane's gonna be a nice pair of boots as Xpecial's gonna be jumped on next. Chaser so low. Dardoch hunting him down, takes a bite. And Immortals, 50 minutes later, grab their win.
That game was something. And I hope that fight was worth it for those of you that stuck around through that 26-minute game, because boy, it was not explosive at the end. That was, though, an expected finish to the game for Immortals, and it hurts to lose like that if you're Team Dignitas. They were so inadequate in their ability to start team fights, and Pobelter's cracking up. He's probably looking
Pobelter knows
right
what
now.
that game was. Pobelter knows exactly what those last 25 minutes were.
Yeah, I don't think they should have killed Team Dignitas.
Hey,
for the
if you're, if you're Cody Sun, though, you got to be happy about what's sure to be a forever standing damage share record.
Yeah, I'm feeling like that's the highest percentage of team damage in a game this split, but maybe not, because you have a lot of games where a team is losing and they have a really strong poke champion, and then the team just never teams fights and he still has that. But that was a game. That's Immortals
one way to put it. That is indeed one way to summarize exactly how that worked. But for a closer look at exactly what was going on Summoner's Rift, we're going to hand it off to Dash and Azale.
That was a game, and we've got at least one more of those coming our way. But Immortals is able to come out with the victory in 50 minutes there.
Did Immortals win, or did Dignitas just lose?
I don't know, man. 25 minutes, close to closing in on 25 minutes of no action there. So from essentially the 25-minute mark to the game ender, no kills were given in either direction. So I mean, it makes for a very interesting game from an analytical standpoint in that can we find places where they should have been doing more and ended the game sooner? Or on the flip side, for Dignitas, how do you ever expect to win a game if you're going to sit back in your base for 25 minutes and refuse to fight?
See, that's the thing to me, is it's like you can't really criticize the team that won the game in that situation, where it's like, okay, well, the other team's just going to bleed every objective and give you Baron and not contest any of the inhibitors, and you can slowly win the game. Okay, it's not the most flashy way to win, but you're going to win for sure if they're never going to fight you over anything, right?
Right.
So to me, that's way more on Dignitas, where it's like, has there ever been a stronger example of playing to not lose? Right? They were not playing that game to win. They didn't try anything. They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
That was not a good performance from Dignitas.
No, absolutely not. But let's go ahead and take a look at champion select here, because Immortals, we really like this draft out of them. All hinges on this Warwick pick out of Dardoch. So we're going to pull it up here right behind us. We're going to walk through this kind of step by step. This pretty phenomenal draft put together by Immortals.
Yeah, I think that Immortals actually, had a bit of a coup here. They were able to pull off a really nice draft. I think that when you think about the fact that Ivern, Rengar and Kha'Zix are kind of considered the S tiers right now. If you look across AEU, the new trends that are being seen about Ivern's priority as well as NNA. So Rengar's already taken off the table by Dig. We see both the other two S tiers taken off the table by Immortals.
So that screams to Dignitas, jungle pinch in phase 1, right? We need to secure a jungler because of how many are already banned that if we wait till phase 2, we can be totally screwed out of an S tier. So as the bans, or rather the picks fill in, you see that they jump for this Graves. But the team that pinched the jungle didn't pick up a jungler.
So where I think this is really smart from Immortals is they already said, Hermes said, they were expecting the attention on Dardoch in pick ban, but they already have a pick planned. So you get your S tier AD carry, basically the best one in the game. You have the best tank in the game. You have a fantastic support. Check, check, check. Like, it's looking pretty good so far,
Yeah,
right?
we're feeling good right now.
Where you can see the attack here is that it's like, oh, but Dardoch's your best player. He's going to get screwed. He's not going to be playing a good jungler. You have Cody Sun on a strong champion, you have Flame on a strong champion, but they're not really your carries. And then as we move through the drafts, we see that Dignitas is thinking the same thing. They're saying, you know what, you goofed. We take away the rest of the jungle pool that's pretty strong here. Support and mid lane going to be attacked from Immortals, but the second ban phase really not as important here. It's all about the fact that they had the Warwick pick planned. So look at all the jungle attention here. 3 jungle bans from Dignitas, 2 jungle bans from Immortals. They still get their pre-planned pick.
Right.
It works well. And they have Ryze, they have Maokai, they have Varus, arguably some of the best, if not the best, in each of their lanes.
And I think that's the important thing to note, that this isn't necessarily a concession because it was planned, right? If they weren't planning to play this Warwick, then they could have been in a really tight spot and we'd say this is a bad draft out of them. But because the intention was to essentially bait Dignitas into thinking this is going to be a jungle-focused draft, we're going to secure these S-tier champions in all of our other roles. And although Warwick might not be considered S-tier, Dardoch has practiced on it. He's confident. And we even saw in his play, maybe there are still improvements to be made on his Warwick play, but he was making moves in the early game with 2 losing solo laners.
Yeah, I mean, Pobelter was getting blasted in the mid lane. His top laner got solo killed. So he was able to still make something happen from that position, which is very tough. It's very easy for the opposing team to take over in the 2v2 because they're stronger with either their solo lane. And so he went bot. He was able to make stuff happen there. And I just think this was such a smart draft, and it showcases almost better than any other drafts we've had this season just how important it is to be able to have a flexible champion pool. They were able to pull this off because Dardoch was comfortable on another champion that Dignitas was not even really considering as a viable pick.
And this is the thing, I'll be curious to see as the year goes on how many more teams are willing to invest time into a very specific, unique pick, if only to open themselves up more in drafts for other players. We'll see which teams are willing to, sacrifice that time to actually learn a new champion. But now let's go ahead and take a look at this post-game breakdown here. I mean, the damage Delta champions, the official percentage, 65.5% of the team's damage done by Cody Sun there on the Varus. You can tell that's what they were all laughing at as they were walking off the stage looking at those damage stats.
Yeah, I mean, Flame got involved in some stuff at the end, but essentially that was a 0-1-0 Maokai for like 50 minutes, and the only thing that was really happening was Varus was shooting arrows, and Cody Sun, he did a good job. He had some good skill shot accuracy. Varus is pretty nuts, has some inflated damage in a game that slow. How does Dignitas ever expect to win?
Right. At the end of the day, Cody Sun will pick up player of the game for that 65.5% damage share. And at the end, playing what was their first pick, right? So they played around that win condition. Again, they got that S. That's what they needed. Now here's the question. Moving into game 2, Dignitas, as you mentioned, well, they can't just sit back and lose another game. Yeah. But then what's their key to winning? Because Keane was off to a great start. We had 2 kills early on Pobelter and a lot of focus mid from Chaser. Then it all just unraveled.
Here's where it's almost like you have to talk about the draft from their side as far as Jayce, and we've seen this time and time again for Jayce. He gets a solo kill, he's up CS, he can't do anything because they have no real initiation. They don't have a tank in the jungle, they don't have a tank in the top lane, no way to force fights. They're trying to put somebody on a carry because they're saying he's our best player, but you need someone who can engage, you need someone who can start fights. When your solo laners are both blasting the game, you should be able to have someone who can take advantage of that, who can force a fight, who can make something happen. They never did it. They need to be proactive. Get something done. All
right, well, yeah, so if they're going to pick those kind of lane-dominant picks, they're going to have to find a way to engage somewhere else. Otherwise, you got to return to Ssumday on a tank, at least to be able to start fights. We're going to take a quick break, but meet us back here in a few minutes for Game 2 between Dignitas and Immortals. We'll see you soon. That was a fun play.